We're going to talk more specifically in digestion on the fact of what some of the issues that show up are, because this is leading into the detox and cleanse, which I am in the first phases of. First phases are pretty easy. The actual detox cleanse, depending on how deep you go into it, can get a little bit more intense depending upon your constitution and depending upon how we design it. But I highly recommend it, everybody. It's really important to have that cleanse, to be able to start over and to be able to reset your body. And there's many different levels and there's many different variants of it. Just the main stuff is getting the junk out is the main portion of it. And a lot of my clients, when I've worked with them, if they just do the main stuff, they don't even have to do the fasting portion of it, or they don't have to do khichdi if they don't want to, although there are benefits, deeper benefits to being able to do some of those a little bit more challenging practices, at least for a day or two, or you do it throughout the month a little bit differently. So there's going to be plenty of different options if you're interested in doing a cleanse, which means that you clean out your diet, and the detox is where you detoxify at a cellular level. So detox is a little harsher. Not harsher in the way that it's just horrible, harsher in the way that it's very boring. That's really what it is. People can say that, detoxes are so horrible. It's like, no, a lot of them are just plain boring. That's really what it is. You get sick of eating the same foods all the time. So that's sometimes why I end up fasting, because I'm like, I don't even want to think about food for a couple of days, and that'll be fine. Or I do juice or something like that. So we'll talk about that more next Wednesday. But we're going to start with just the foundations again, to kind of go back and reflect on some of the things that we've talked about over the other lectures. And one of the things is we talked about the lymphatic system and the importance of the lymphatic system in digestion. They are directly linked to each other. So when we take in food, when we take in nourishment, our body takes it, digests it, and then puts it into our circulatory system to be able to feed our muscles. That being said, the byproducts, the stuff that we don't digest, or the stuff that's just harder to digest, the stuff that's junk, we want it to be small enough that it goes into our lymphatic system. Lymphatic system carries it out. It gets eliminated through various avenues as sweat, feces, and urine. So we want those things to be able to happen in our body. When those things happen efficiently, we have no issues. Like, this is really the foundation of it. If our circulatory system is working well, which in most cases it is, it's an easier system to work with. It's got a pump. It's got its own pump called the heart, and it works very, very efficiently. Our lymphatic system does not have a natural pump. Our lymphatic system runs completely different than our other systems do. And in fact, the mesenteric lymph of the lymphatic system around the digestive system is considered our 79th organ of our body. And it's just been classified as that in the last few years. So this is pretty significant, considering this is now considered an organ, not just a system. And this organ is what pulls off the toxins off our body. When it's not working well, it pushes the toxins either into our skin and out of our body that way. It pushes it into our fat. So that's why we see fat gain in our midsection. So one, it can be stress, but usually stress is going to have an influence on our digestive system, which has an influence on our lymphatic system because our body doesn't digest the food properly. We also forget sometimes that not all our hormones are created in our brain. So our brain does a lot of the hormone calibrating, we'll call it, where our digestive system actually produces a lot of the hormones. So the hormones like cortisol, excuse me, you guys, this is ridiculous. Cortisol, serotonin are all produced actually in our digestive system, or the majority of it is. And these are all a little bit newer findings in Western medicine. So I'm not just spewing out information that's Eastern voodoo magic. It's really the truth. So we really want to be able to get the proper movement of our digestive system. So I'm going to go through a bunch of questions, and you can kind of take this into consideration. So this is something you can take notes on to see where you're at and see what your degree level of either food intolerance or digestibility, because this will give you some ideas on what's actually going on in your body. So first question is, do you have problems digesting wheat? So wheat, gluten, any of those things. A lot of times when this happens, it means that our digestive acids, so our acids in our stomach, are not properly introduced into our stomach, whether it is that we don't have the right buffer meaning our body isn't hydrated enough, our digestive system isn't hydrated enough, or it can be that our acids aren't being produced or released at the right time or in the right amount. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong with our stomach acids, and that comes from our liver and our gallbladder. So these are really important things for our body to be able to keep that balance in our stomach. Otherwise, the byproduct is acid reflux or indigestion or heartburn. Do you have occasional issues with dairy? So if you have any dairy intolerances, it's different if you're born with it. That's a little bit different issue. That's an actual allergy. But those of us that have accumulated some sort of intolerance to pretty much any kind of food means that there's something going on with our digestive system, whether our lymphatic system is not properly draining, it could be clogged up, or the actual digestive system has some sort of irritation, not producing enough enzymes, not having enough enzymes or bacteria in our digestive system. So we have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria, and then our cultures, microbiome type stuff. And then we have neutrals, and neutrals just take up dead space. So they're not needed either. So we've got the good stuff, which we need a lot of, and we have the bad stuff, which causes digestive issues. And if there's too many of the bad and not enough of the good, then things get out of balance. This is where we look at prebiotics and probiotics. And if you're taking a lot of over-the-counter probiotics, you have digestive issues, and they're nice, but they aren't designed to be taken long-term, because we should be able to get a lot of these bugs, so to speak, from our food. And our food is so incomplete now, and it's not necessarily because of our environment. It's more so the toxins that we put on it, the chemicals that are introduced to it to make it prettier for most of us. So you want to have those foods with the bugs on it. If you're growing it in your own garden and they're GMO free, like, you're definitely going to have bugs in your digestive system that people that don't garden don't have. If you play in the dirt, you're going to have more bugs in your digestive system than people that don't play in the dirt. Like, we're just talking about playing with dirt, not even eating the dirt. So there is something to be said about, pulling the carrot out of the garden and just eating it, wiping it off in your pants. Those of us that are farm kids definitely understand that, or grew up with gardens and grandparents that had gardens. You just pull it out of the garden and you eat it. There's something to be said about that, because the enzymes on there, the microbes on there are necessary for our digestive system. Most of the cells in our body aren't really our own. They're living little beings that are creating this perfect digestive unit. And they all work together. And when they don't exist, things don't work so well. That's why these harder to digest foods like dairy, gluten, meat to an extent are important, because our body needs to learn how to digest them. If they can't digest them, they cannot digest environmental pollutants, which are way more toxic to our system than gluten and dairy. I'm not saying if you're gluten and dairy intolerant that you should just reintroduce the food. I am saying that a good cleanse or doing some sort of microbe introduction would definitely be something to look at. All right. If you have issues digesting skim milk or milk at all, it can be the fact that your body isn't releasing enough stomach acid to be able to digest them. If you can't digest cream or heavy fats, this can be because your body is unable to digest fat, which means it's a gallbladder thing that's going on. And gallbladder surgeries are one of the #1 surgeries that happen in this country. And it's really an unneeded surgery in most cases. It's just an easy one to take out because we have other organs that can supplement somewhat. But our gallbladder is actually very important because the bile that it produces helps to buffer things in our digestive system. So it kind of eats up and then helps our body to be able to detoxify, meaning pulling the waste products out of our body. So these little things are really important. They work together. We wouldn't be made the way we are if we weren't supposed to have the organs that we have. We'll just say it that way. I mean, that's a very Eastern way of looking at things, is that these organs in our body are designed to do what they're supposed to do because we need them to do it in that order. We start manipulating, changing, cutting out. That's when we start seeing other issues later on in life. And I know that, there are some people that get very, very sick and gallbladder needs to be taken out, appendix, that kind of stuff. Like, there are things that come up, but there are also a lot of things that lead into that. So working on digestion is really a key thing, and the lymphatic system along with that. occasional heartburn, or acid indigestion. So if you find that things like baking soda work, this means that your stomach acid is probably a little too high. If it's apple cider vinegar that helps, this means that you don't have enough stomach acid. So these gives us ideas on what we should do in our digestive system, in our detox, or in our food supplementation, to be able to create the right kind of juices to be able to digest. Or maybe it's some sort of lifestyle change that needs to happen, meaning eating at certain times of the day. I'll go through that again in a little bit. Let's see, do you feel queasy or bloated after a high-fat meal? So if you feel queasy or bloated after a high-fat meal, this can show that maybe you're having a lack of bile. So the bile in your body is not being produced at the right time. And the bile, gallbladder cleanses are a little bit different, because we reintroduce fat into the body. We cut certain things out and reintroduce fat. We teach our body how to digest fat better. A lot of us do not digest fat very well. So if we find that we actually get sick after eating high-fat foods or greasy foods, that's a good sign that something's going on with your gallbladder, and that there's something's not being released or produced at the right time. And going back to eating at meal timing, the meal timing is super important, because when we eat at the same times, our body produces the right stuff at the right time. If we keep our body guessing what time we're going to eat, then what happens is our body goes, do I produce some now, or do I produce this later? Because there are specific hormones called ghrelin and leptin. And ghrelin, so gremlin, that's how I remember it. Ghrelin makes us hungry. So it's produced to make us hungry, so that other things can be released in a timely order to be able to digest food. Leptin helps us to feel full. So this is also important, because we want to feel full after we get done eating, so that we don't eat or crave more food. If we make our body guess, and I know we just went through daylight savings time again, and us in the Eastern practices are going, why are we putting ourselves through a jet lag twice a year? Then we really don't need to be doing it. So right now, our bodies have to recalibrate. I'm noticing with my body, like, it doesn't know what to do, because I eat at pretty specific times of the day. And if I fast in the evening often. But I eat a big breakfast and I eat a big noon meal. And this week has been just wonky trying to recalibrate my digestive system. So I know if I have issues, then people that eat all over the board at all different times are definitely going to have digestive issues, and their body's not going to release the right chemicals at the right time. Do you get occasional heartburn 30 minutes to an hour after you get done eating? So again, this might have something to do with the buffer system. So your body's not producing enough bile to be able to buffer the acid that's in our stomach. So our stomach is where our body adds all these chemicals to be able to start breaking down and digesting the food. So we need to chew it really well. We swallow it, it goes into our stomach, all right? Our body adds acids and it adds enzymes to be able to our acids and bile to be able to protect bile and to be able to break down the food. These things have to happen. Otherwise, when it gets to the other organs, it might not break down at all, or it gets pushed in our lymphatic system and it causes a lot of other issues like weight gain in our stomach and many other things that can go on too along with that. Do you have occasional slow bowel movements? So are your bowel movements slow, sluggish? Are they irritated? This can be because your system is too dry, meaning you don't have enough good fats in your diet. So it can be anything from like avocado to ghee. I'm a huge supporter of ghee. We use that a lot in our cleanses and detoxes because it's just, I have to give a whole lecture on ghee because it's pretty perfect. But if you don't cook with ghee, I highly recommend it. It's much easier to digest than most oils are, and it's very stable and it's got a high cooking temperature. Another thing can be that your digestive system is dehydrated. So last week we talked about drinking a glass of water. So 10 to 16 ounces of water before, about a half an hour before you eat. This helps to hydrate your digestive system so that your body has an initial buffer to be able to digest food and goes, hey, I can take on a lot here, and helps our body to be able to circulate it however that is, through our blood or out through our lymphatic system. It can also be the lack of bile again. So the bile in our digestive system helps to pull out the byproducts of our digestion. Trouble digesting heavy fat foods, I already talked about that. Do you feel better when you take digestive enzymes? So if you feel better when you're taking digestive enzymes, this can again be congestion of your bile flow. So meaning your body is not producing the right chemicals at the right time to be able to digest food. Do you have highs and lows of energy throughout the day? This is fairly common in our culture, where we 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we get hungry, or we need a snack, or we need some sort of caffeine or some sort of stimulant to be able to get going. And this is because our body's having issues regulating our blood sugar. So this comes from our pancreas. So we really want to make sure, again, that we keep our blood sugar as stable as possible. And in Ayurveda, we talk about sweet foods. We don't talk about sweet foods in the same way that Western culture talks about sweet foods. So we're not talking sweet foods like sugar. We're talking sweet foods like carrots and a lot of the fruits. Some of them go sweet, some of them are sour, depending on the fruit. But we're talking about things that help us to have that sweet taste that brings sukha, sweetness, into our life. And it's not the things that we think of. It's not sugar. Honey is considered sweet. Honey is a prabhav. It actually has an effect that we don't understand, because most sugars or sweets help to build our body. And this one actually scrapes and detoxifies our body. So honey is a perfect food. Like we can't even classify it because it's so unique. It's definitely a gift from the little bee gods. And then we'll go into complete bowel movements less than once a day. So if you're not having a bowel movement, so if you're constipated, constipation is a huge issue, because if you think about it, what is a bowel movement? Like, that is the toxins of our body, like the toxic toxins of our body. And we want to make sure that's being eliminated out of our system. Colon cancer is a pretty high percentage in this country. Do you think it's because we have a lot of people that are constipated, holding on, gripping, grasping in our colon? I think so. So we want to make sure that we are properly eliminating. And we can do this by making sure we drink a large glass of water in the morning. So large glass of lemon water can help to get peristalsis going, especially if you're a little sluggish in the morning, a little dry in the morning. We tend to be dehydrated in the morning because we've just fasted for whatever amount of time you've been asleep, or whatever time you stopped eating. So if you're following some of the stuff that I've been teaching, I say about 6 o'clock. So it'll be 6 o'clock to at least 6 o'clock. That's 12 hours of probably not taking in a lot of liquids. So definitely no more food. And maybe you're stopping your liquids around 8 o'clock because you don't want to get up at 2 o'clock to go to the bathroom, which is definitely an issue for a lot of people. And this is something to take into consideration: is get hydrated in the morning, take in bulk in the morning, and then start to, taper off after that 6 o'clock p.m. But get most of your fluids in during the day, because this will help you have more energy, help you feel more alert, help your body eliminate toxins, because all night it's been detoxifying at a cellular level, and it has to go somewhere. It has to go out eventually. And you can't tell me that when you're constipated that you feel good. I've never once been constipated and say, I feel so great right now. No, you feel like crap, literally, especially after a day or so. Traveling does that to me sometimes, but I've got now practices that I do that help for that process. So make sure that you're getting eliminating. Another can be that you're not getting enough fats. Fats create a slipperiness, if that's a word, it can be today. And then also, so hydration, make sure you're getting enough oils, so good fats and good oils. And then it can be an irritation of the mucous membranes of the digestive system. So there's different factors that can play a part. And usually this is somewhat a constitutional thing too, but it tends to be more vata for those of you that are learning the lingo. Experience loose stools. So this can be loose stools or with mucus in the stools. This can be a sign that there's a lot of mucus in the digestive system. Another way that you can check is in the morning, if you stick out your tongue and it's wearing a coat, especially a white coat, this can be a good sign that you've got a lot of mucus and a lot of ama in your digestive system. So the ama, again, is the undigested byproduct of our food. So I notice that if I, like, let's say I go out and I have a beer is just like my number one, like, coating on the tongue the next morning. A lot of yeast and a lot of byproduct happens when I drink beer specifically, and sugar is the same way, pretty much the same thing in the digestive world. So I'll have a bunch of ama on my tongue. Well, if it's there, it's definitely through the rest of my system, and I definitely want to be able to get it out as soon as possible through hydration, especially. But just making sure that, our body is eliminating the mucus properly, not producing more mucus. And different constitutions are going to be different. So if you tend to be a little thicker boned, so if you've been thicker boned your whole life, bigger body, had troubles losing weight most of your life, you're more of a kapha structure. Kaphas create mucus for a job, especially think of little kids. So that's the kapha stage of life. They create mucus. Like, that's what they do. They get sick. They create mucus. They're not even sick. They still create mucus. So as adults, we don't want to be creating that much mucus. We don't need that lubrication for the same thing that they need it for in the process of growing, growing body tissues and stuff like that. Don't need as much kapha in our body. So we want to make sure that our body is eliminating that mucus. Those of us that have thinner, slighter frames, we tend not to have as much unless you have cold or unless it's cold outside. Then our body creates that mucus to be able to protect it. Do you have excess intestinal gas or bloating? So this can be poor function of the intestinal villi. So little finger-like projections in our stomach that help to pull food out or help to bring food into our body and toxins out of our body can be somehow irritated or plugged up or not working properly. Stress, does your stress affect your digestive system? So when you get stressed, do you get that pit in your stomach? Do you tend to eat through it? Do you stress eat? This is one of the things that I talked about in one of my little blogs on my website, was about the effects of stress on our digestive system. And this is a huge thing because they're produced a lot in the same area. So we're digesting food and we're also producing cortisol in that area. Our mind tells us, that it wants to shut everything off. So I've had lots of lectures on stress, and I'll have another one next month. But our body, when it gets in a stressful situation, doesn't know the difference between positive stress or negative stress, short-term stress or long-term stress, real stress or perceived stress. Does not know the difference. It produces the same chemicals in the same order at the same rate. So when it happens, it happens. So when we get in a stressful situation, whether it's real or fake, we either have to recalibrate as quickly as possible. So if it's a fake one, we have to recalibrate quickly as possible so we stop the production of cortisol, because cortisol is going to shut everything else down. Cortisol's job is to shut off digestion, reproduction, and to move and the immune system, and to move all the blood into our extremities to fight, flight, or flee. So this makes a big difference, because then it takes it away from the digestive system. How are we going to digest food when our body's under a lot of stress? So what our body does is it sits there in our gut. We probably get gut rot. We maybe don't. Maybe we're so used to it, we don't even notice the difference anymore. And then it pushes it into our lymphatic system. Our lymphatic system says, this isn't mine. And then sticks it into our fat tissue around our belly, making us gain weight around our stomach. Kind of cool, huh? Kind of cool, but not so cool. Yeah. Stress management, it's a big deal. All right. So going to the next thing, do you carry extra weight around your belly? So go right into the next question. We just talked about that, how the body, the lymphatic system gets congestion, pushes it into our fat cells around our stomach. We all have them, no matter if we have a 6-pack or if we're carrying a keg, we still have the fat tissue around there. It just depends on how big it gets with the toxins that we're carrying. Do you get puffy or hold water in your legs, your feet, or your hands? So this is another lymphatic congestion, but more so in your extremities. So not so much around your digestive system, but you're holding congestion in the extremities of your body. Kaphas will see this more than any other constitution, or if you're extremely out of balance, you'll see it. So the people that have bigger bone, bigger bodies, they tend to retain a little more water. Their constitution is water and earth. So they're going to retain more water than somebody like me. I don't tend to retain water unless something's really out of balance. And it does happen. Like it happens to us all at some point in time where it's like, oh, that's different. But kaphas will be so used to it that they're like, oh, it's just kind of what happens all the time. Or they'll go on a flight and things will just balloon up. I've got a friend whose system balloons up pretty big when she travels, and it looks terrible. I mean, it feels so bad for her because it looks so painful. But yeah, so that's has to do with the congestion of the extremities of the lymphatic system. Stiff in the morning. So this can be inflammation, but that's still only a byproduct of what's going on. So yes, the inflammation can be there, but it's also related to the congestion in our lymphatic system. So this is where the lymphatic system is either starting to create inflammation, it's holding on to inflammation for some reason. So being able to get the inflammation under control is fine if your body has the capability of being able to do it. So if your body can't take the nutrition in, like let's say you're doing turmeric and you're doing other foods and anti-inflammatories, and it's like, if your body can't digest it, it's still not going to work. Because I've seen people that are like, oh, I've got such horrible inflammation and I eat really well. It's like, have you looked at your lymphatic system? Like if it's clogged up, it doesn't matter, because the immune system is going to do what it's going to do. So our lymphatic system, part of our lymphatic system is not just the drains, it is also our immune system. So it creates the immune response, whether it be positive or negative. So positive immune response, get a cold, get a sickness, get a cut, it reacts, it causes an inflammation, that's its job. And that heat creates a cooking atmosphere to kill the virus, the infection, whatever it may be. If our body creates a unhealthy immune response, so an autoimmune response, it means it's attacking its own immune system. So this is a whole nother level of stuff going sideways. Inflammation is the same way. It's when the body's overproducing it for some sort of reason. So it can be dietary, it can be stagnation is usually has to do with it. So the lymphatic system is stagnant, circulation is somewhat stagnant at that point. So looking at your activity, inactivity too. Are you just sitting all day? That's going to cause way more stagnant energy in your body. Move. Even if you just get up out of your desk every hour and just walk around the house, or go outside and walk around the block a couple times a day, it makes a huge difference. I was a little frustrated with an article that came out that I read about the whole 10,000 step debate. And they put in there like 4,500 steps is good enough for a daily allowance of movement. And I do not agree even one bit. I agree that if you're completely sedentary, that's a good place to start. But if you want the health benefits of movement, 10,000 steps is what you should be getting, or pretty close to it, because we are far too stagnant in this society to only take a minimal amount of steps. There are health benefits, but if you're sedentary, going to 4,000, that's a big change. If you're active, or you're already at 4,000 daily, pushing it up to that, 8,000 is there. But if you want a healthy lifestyle, 10,000 is pretty good. And I do play in that role. I believe in the 10,000 steps. That's my minimum. So that definitely makes me feel better. All right. So do you have any itchiness or irritation in your skin? So meaning, for those of us that are more pitta constitution, we experience this in the summertime when we get rashes, when we get heat rashes. That would be a really good sign that the lymph of our skin is actually irritated some way. So the lymphatic system in our skin is pushing the heat out through our skin. This happens with other people too, but it happens more with pitta constitution. We just have more heat by nature, so we push it out through our skin when it gets too hot on the inside. So this happens during the summertime. It can happen through other times. Skin irritations like eczema, acne, that kind of thing is, again, our body's way of pushing toxins out. And usually that has some sort of link to our liver. I mean, most Eastern practices will say that skin and liver are very closely related. So you want to look at the energy of your liver. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're taking in good bacteria. So a good way to take in good bacteria, of course, is through probiotics. But the thing about probiotics is, in most cases, once it hits our stomach, and if we're producing too much stomach acid, our body will just fry it. So it doesn't really live in that environment. So we want to make sure that we're getting probiotics in some other way, shape, or form. And ways to be able to get good bacteria into your body are, of course, what we always think of is like yogurts, kefir, buttermilk, fermented vegetables, so like kimchi and sauerkraut, fermented fruits, pickled foods, as long as they're not super spicy, not super spicy, super salty. So we don't want them super salty, especially if you have that kapha constitution. I do highly recommend the fermented vegetables. So if you like kimchi, or I mean, there's one called Minnesota Nice or something like that. It's a Minnesota kimchi. My mouth is just watering right now. I really do love kimchi right now. It's definitely I can tell I'm in the kapha season. I want to have it. But I recommend that kimchi because it's pretty mild. Like they have a non-spicy, good for Minnesotans, I guess, and they have the medium. Those are a little sassier, and then they've got the spicy one. But I'd recommend either the medium or the lighter one, and just get some of those vegetables in. And we're not talking about eating a huge pile of it. I'm talking about having it like a condiment. So having it just a little bit on the side with your food at every meal. And what this does, it introduces the good bacteria, especially if you're not getting it from your foods. So if you're not eating a balanced diet, it's a good way to kind of do a little bit of a cheater step. So making sure that you're not eating foods that are processed, that are packaged, prepackaged. I mean, like I'm talking intensely prepackaged. I mean, opening a can of garbanzo beans and cooking them is one thing, but having a can of green beans is completely another thing. So eating foods that are as close, I call it as close to the cow as possible. So meaning it's as fresh as it possibly can get. But again, if you can, stuff like that, if you can your own food, that's perfectly fine, because those are going to have some cultures in them too. And then looking at preservatives in your food, cooking with oils that aren't stable at certain cooking temperatures. So making sure that you're cooking with certain oils that have high cooking temperatures if you're frying or sauteing or anything like that. So I really recommend ghee. It does have a really high cooking temperature, not like butter. It's not the same thing. It doesn't have the lactose. It's not the same thing. The lactose is cooked out of it. So in Ayurveda, we don't even consider that a dairy. And we use ghee as a medicine all the time. You can make your own. I highly recommend buying it. You can get it at any health food store. It is not in the refrigerator because it is shelf stable. So you can get it. It'll be by the oils and by the oils, by the coconut oil and stuff like that in the health food store. I can't vouch for any of the grocery stores because I don't know. I don't shop at those right now. So looking at those foods, and then they just released the new Dirty Dozen and Clean 16. I think it was just today. It's been the last couple of days, and it was just released, and it's pretty much like all fruit, spinach and kale. Like they're just like bam, 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 bam. So make sure that you're buying your favorite. I always tell my clients, you don't have to buy it all organic. I'm at just about 100%, but that's my thing. And I don't eat much food. Like I've gotten things calibrated pretty well. Like I was saying last week, we eat about 200% more food than we actually need to be able to survive. And in fact, we eat so much extra food that it's not possible to be able to digest it, and we waste so much. So taking into consideration, if you are trying to switch to organic, you'll need a lot less food because A, you'll respect the food more because it's more expensive, and B, the food's just plain, it's better. It's really a lot better. So I'd recommend any staples that you have, buy them organic. So if you're using a lot of garlic and onions, always buy those organic. Although they are not on the list of the Dirty Dozen. And then buying most of your fruits organic, only because they are really, really just hosed with chemicals, and our bodies just can't process that. And if you're already not digesting well, it's just going to add to the issues. So I really do recommend favorite foods, and then, or your staple foods, and then of course the stuff like fruits, and then leafies, anything that's leafy. Leafy is easy to grow. I mean, we're heading into the springtime. Leafy greens are super easy to grow. Spinach is not. If anybody can tell me, you can email me how you grow spinach, because I find that it just bolts really fast. I get some really weird spinaches that I like that are different than the traditional, but I find that it's just frustrating to grow. But other leafy greens grow really, really well, like a mixed green or something. And you can just grow them in a pot. And they're super easy. You just kind of hack them off and you rinse them off a little bit. I put them in a bucket and you just kind of rinse them out. And it's really amazing. And those would have all the microbes you'd need. So think about food. You know, I mean, the topic here was food for medicine. Food is medicine. It is the best medicine. And it's the one thing that we have complete control over in most cases. And it doesn't take a whole lot to make a huge difference. Like there's a lot of little cheater ways. All right. So some things that I want to make sure that we, take into consideration is a lot of the things that I talk about over and over and over and over again is make sure that you have your meal time set. And this is something that in most cases we can do, I'd say at least 90% of the time, if not more often, is eating consistently. So making sure that your breakfast is around 9 o'clock or earlier. Your noon meal is as close to noon as possible, although that can vary a little bit. Just make sure it's consistent because, again, we want our ghrelin and leptin to release at the right times. They're the initiators of everything else to be released at the right time. So we want those things to be able to happen. Digestion happens before we even put food into our mouth. And we want those sequence of events to happen because it'll all help everything digest better, you'll feel better, you'll gain more from your food, your body will eliminate better. It does work. Believe me, it does work. I've made a lot of changes in my diet too. This was not natural. Like it went against a lot of things that I was doing. I ate pretty close to noon and that was not as hard as the evening meal. I used to eat at like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And for those of you that know me, you know that I ate late. And luckily I have the digestive system of a crazed rabbit. So it didn't matter that much because it was never a weight issue. But I did find that when I switched to eating at 5 or 6 o'clock, it's completely different. Like food is, I have no issues with any foods. And I was finding that I was getting some sensitivities and then starting to get acid reflux. So it was interesting how things were starting to show up as I got older. And then also making the largest meal in the middle of the day. So knowing that our digestive system, just like high noon, our digestive system is the strongest in the middle of the day. So we want to eat our largest meal and our riskiest meal at this time. So this is when we can eat our meats and harder to digest foods. During this time of year, our body is starting to crave other foods. I don't know if some of you have noticed that. It's just like, I want greens. Like I want things that I didn't want definitely a month ago. A month ago, I was thinking all soups and I was like seaweed soups and garlic and onions. And now I'm like vegetables and some rice. And it's amazing how when you listen to your body, how it'll tell you what it really needs. And I know that my body needed a detox and cleanse this year. I could feel it last month. I'm like, I have got to do something and I've got to do a long one because I really want to purge out my toxins at a cellular level. I could tell it. And it does make a really big difference. Let's see. Make your evening meal. So supper translates as something a little extra. Make it the smallest meal of the day. So eating things that are lighter, that are easier to digest. This is not the time to tax our digestive system. This time of the day it is the pitta time of day. Pitta means fire, means heat. It has to do with your agni, digestive fire. In the evening, we have kapha working with us, or well, vata and then kapha, and they are not digesters by nature, so that the system tends to get sluggish and slow. So our body's system digests very slowly in the evening. And we don't want that because then we don't feel hungry in the morning, for one thing. Our body will feel sluggish and tired in the morning because we'll be still digesting food versus detoxifying and trying to eliminate the byproducts of our food. Start to get used to using spices. So this is where Minnesotans, my mom was always funny. She always used spices. And I'm like, Mom, salt and pepper aren't the only spices, although they are really important ones. If you want a good digestive aid to when you're eating at a restaurant, if you take a little bit of lemon, a little bit of salt and pepper, and just a dab of honey, like right there, you've got the digestive agni builder right there. It's super simple. And every restaurant's going to have probably those 4 things, or at least the lemon salt and pepper. But that being said, there are other spices that have a lot more benefits, like cumin, coriander, and fennel. They're extremely beneficial for our digestive system and stimulating agni and creating balance in our system. So if you are adding any sort of spices, those are really great ones, especially cumin. Cumin during this time of the year is really good for kindling the digestive fire. And this is something that you can sprinkle in your food. You can cook with it. I cook a lot with hingvasak, which is a spice blend. It's got acidophia and then cumin, coriander, fennel, and a few other spices like pipali and black pepper. And it's definitely a good digestive aid for this time of year. I wouldn't recommend it during the summer for my constitution just because it would create more heat, but it's a good heating one. Fasting. So I'll talk more about fasting and stuff next week, but fasting is something that you can do every day without having to work too hard on it. That means that if you eat your last meal here and then you fast all the way through till 9 o'clock, that's a pretty decent fast. If you want to do more, like sometimes I will do a noon all the way to 9 o'clock the next morning. So once a week, I actually do that. Next week, I'll be doing it even more. I don't know if I'll do a full fast yet because I don't want to lose weight. So I'm kind of like in that boat of what to do. But I will do numerous days of eating my last meal at noon and then fasting until the next morning. So also making sure that you eat breakfast. So think about breakfast as breaking the fast. It's something that helps our body to start digesting food. If we skip breakfast, we actually can cause a lot of irritation in our digestive system and not teach our body to do the right thing. Because more than likely, if you're not eating breakfast, you're probably having a big cup of coffee. And that, again, is really hard on the digestive system. I watch this with people around me that they love their coffee in the morning, and I can respect that. I love coffee. It's going to be the hardest thing for me to do during this cleanse. Everything else I'm not worried about. I really don't want to quit drinking coffee, but I have to, like it's part of the deal. So what I always recommend is in the morning, drinking that large glass of lemon water. The lemon water helps to alkaline your body. So it's an acid out of our body. It's acid in our mouth, but once it gets into our body, it alkalines. So your body is naturally acidic in the morning because it's been detoxifying all night long. So if you take that and drink that in the morning, you've got some buffer in there, and then eat some food, even if it's small, even if it's like just an avocado, or during this time of year, I start to switch to quinoa flakes and blueberries, and then make like an oatmeal type in the morning. It's really, really good with a little bit of maple syrup. Really great breakfast. It gives you energy. It's high in protein because quinoa is super high in protein. But I use the quinoa flakes, so they're the flattened flakes. It's just like the difference between oatmeal and oats. It's a flat flake, and I really like it. For those of you that ate malto meal, it'll remind you of malto meal. It's a lot like that. Some people know what that is. I grew up on that. I'm like, wow, how did I not die? Anyway, so I would say get some sort of breakfast, and you can even do later after the detox, I'll be doing avocado. So I'll take an avocado and then do blueberries and maybe a mango or something else with that. That's brain food right there. Straight up brain food. Avocado and blueberries are like straight brain food. So if you want something that's really going to help for intelligence and focus, like it's super clean, it's pretty light, but it still has some density to it. I thought it wasn't going to be enough food, but it really is. It's very sustainable because there's so much fat in avocado. So those are just some recommendations for that. Making sure that you're drinking enough water and staying hydrated during the day is super important. And you can do herbal teas, but remember, if you drink any caffeinated teas, caffeine is a diuretic. Coffee is a diuretic. So making sure that you're drinking enough water. I don't drink a lot of straight up water unless I'm doing cleanse or detox, because then I do hot sips. Hot sips helps to get the lymphatic system flowing. Something I'll talk about a little bit more next week. And then, but I drink a lot of hot teas. So I have my own tea company, and I use my teas, or I'll do just a little bit of like a little bit of spices like cardamom or something in some water. So I have a little something in there to give it taste. I don't drink lemon water all day long because, like I said at the beginning, lemon is an acid out of our body. Still an acid when it goes in our mouth, so it can do a lot of damage to your teeth. So I wouldn't recommend drinking any lemon water all day long. But in the first thing in the morning, completely fine, because then you'll be eating not long after that anyway. All right. So I think that you have a lot of ideas there. So we're talking about the digestive system over the last few weeks. We're going to go into the detox and cleanse next week, talking more specifically about what that entails. You can do with me. You can make up your own version. I'll give you a couple, a few hints to be able to get things going, and certain things that you can do if you want to do a really soft version. I have a few different versions because it'll all depend on the depth, and then again, your constitution, to be able to balance things that are maybe out of balance, to be able to reset your body. There's longer ones, there's shorter ones. So there's lots of information out there about detoxes and cleanses, and just make sure that you're doing something that's safe for you too, because liver and gallbladder detox can be pretty intense. I do a really soft version because it's all about introducing the right foods. So food is medicine, right? So introducing the right foods to be able to increase bile production and balance out acid production and stuff like that. So I look at it a little bit differently than, okay, this is what you do. It's like, you might not have to do that. If you follow the rules in the beginning, the hard part is a lot easier. Let's put it that way. It really is. So the better you are during the